Hello. I'm looking at if things work because I haven't loaded this overlay in a while. Hi everyone. I'm Simon at Wandering DM, and in lieu of a game tonight, I pulled a whole switcheroo, and because some of the players have some work-life things to do, I figured there's something that I've been putting off for a while now, which was to talk about, just sit down and have a chat with all of y'all, and also for the VOD, so people watching on VOD. Hi. Basically, I want to talk about what we did in 2024, sort of a retrospective, and then, you know, talk about what went wrong, what went well, and I'm very, I guess, nervous, but also eager to talk about the things that we're going to do this year, because I've been working all year last year on a lot of very big projects. I mean, personally, outside of what I'm doing for work. And I am going to present a lot of it, maybe all of it tonight, maybe not all of it. I'll see about that. But yes, there's a cat who... So if I ever disappear in the middle of the stream, it's because my cats have discovered how to basically step on the power bar and cut off power to modem, router, and my computer. It's happened like 3 times so far, and yeah, basically every time I'm not paying attention to them, they will warn me like 3 times, and then that's it. So that is kind of a problem. There's music playing in the background, but I don't think y'all can hear them or hear it. Let me just do a little thing here so we don't have just my grating voice. Audio output. Yeah, that should work. That should also be copyright-free music, so, you know. To anyone that keeps fucking striking my videos on YouTube, I'm paying for this Epidemic Sound license, for fuck's sake. So yeah, finale for Warhammer next week. I'll open up with the Warhammer, I guess, because I see Popes in chat, and this is something that I know we've like briefly discussed at some point, but I really want to like sit down with you to talk about the differences between Imperium Maledictum and the various editions of Dark Heresy, and also Wrath and Glory. The things that I liked, the things I didn't like, you probably saw over the course of those of you who watched like the entire campaign. We've been using different rules for fights as we went along for the different encounters, and that is mostly because I am trying to see, like, what do I like about it, what do I not like? So I got turned off of Wrath and Glory because of the, yeah, Krellin, Wrath and Glory is quite different. I was invited for a short shot over on, oh my god, what's the name of their channel? Devil's Luck Gaming. I don't know if they're still around, but basically, the GM over there, whose name Lord Conti, did a renegade of Wrath and Glory that I joined. It was like just 3 players. We went little 3 shots. I was playing Criminal. It's kind of like Edge of Empire because of like proprietary dice, right? But it's also a how do I put it? It's a different power level. It's a massively different power level. Like, for instance, you can play with like a Space Marine next to an Orc next to a Criminal. Like in my case, in the game that I was in, we had a Tech Priest, a Space Marine Scout. I don't remember which chapter he was in, and then me, who was basically a sort of I was like a Navis Nobilite reject. So like I didn't have the 3rd eye. I would have been a navigator, but never could. So I had like a little trait to start with, and then the rest was basically just a Criminal. And there is a vast difference in power level, even though they try to like put everyone on the same footing. To me, it doesn't it doesn't quite work. I see Wrath and Glory, and I think might have been Pope also who mentioned it in chat during our premiere or something, but like Wrath and Glory is very much the Marvel of Warhammer 40k TTRPGs. It's the we have big guns, we do big action, but it doesn't have to be all Space Marines. It's weird. I didn't want to play Wrath and Glory on stream because of that. Have a love for Only War and Black Crusade for their mechanics. See, I haven't touched Black Crusade yet, and I do have Rogue Trader over there, which I haven't played. I mean, I've played the RPG on Steam a bit too much. Which reminds me, how many hundreds of hours have I put in that game? 396 hours so far in Rogue Trader. I haven't touched the TTRPG, though I did play Dark Heresy 2nd edition, and that's sort of where I had a falling out with it. By the way, to anyone watching, even on the VOD, unless it's already been filled, Pope World Build on Blue Sky is actually looking for one last player to run a game of Dark Heresy, the TTRPG, over on Saturdays, I believe. Pope, if you want to just put like the link in chat or something, go right ahead. I also realized that you're not a mod on the channel. That's weird. I'm gonna have to fix that. Let me see. I fix that right away. Yeah, that's what I thought. Give me a second. I'll tell you to. I'll ask you to put the link back in once I've updated your role. Because I mean, you were in the I didn't realize you were in the Vampire game this whole time and wasn't a mod in on the channel. So yeah, Black Crusade. Don't know enough about it. It's got this interesting thing where skills and talents are tied to a particular chaos gods and you can specialize. Oh, okay, so Black Crusade is basically like the chaos version of would be interesting. I don't know how much I like Chaos Space Marines. I like my dog boys a bit too much to go over to the dark side. Though I do have to admit, over on Warhammer Fantasy, I did especially love the Knight's Dark Master. Yeah, is that it? Dark Masters of the Night? Anyway, the Vampire book, which basically lets you play vampires in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Really cool. I know there's like vampire adjacent Space Marines, but I think that's just veering into the silly part of Warhammer at that point. Even though I mean, you've seen it with what's been happening in this campaign, right? That I don't tend to take 40k too seriously, but at some point there are some things that I just go like, I don't know, maybe you should keep the, I don't know, fantasy things in the fantasy. Pope, you are now moderator, so if you want to put the link back in. But basically, yeah, over on Start Playing, I think. So yeah, the DH2 game, the rules were too complicated. I had to put together a whole spreadsheet for my character just so I knew which talents and which skills to level up so I could finally get to dual wield a sword and a pistol at the same time. And I thought that was a bit too complicated. And so when I read Imperium Maledictum and found that it was simpler, I was like, oh, I want to try it. So far, I really enjoy it. I will say though that I'm less of a fan of the zone type of fighting. So that was the first encounter we did with in the Granariums, where basically the map is split into like certain areas and the movement is more or less abstract. You go from like one zone to the next. The thing I did like though is that each zone has to have a feature. The DH2 scorebooks among the worst organized. Yes. Yes, I think it's up there with, in my opinion, the old White Wolf World of Darkness books, where you have no indexes and no way to find things easily. Good for if you want to read it cover to cover, bad if you want to do anything else with it. But yeah, so there's this this type of combat with zones and everything that I thought was just not a big fan of it. I tried it with the Modifius Fallout game too, and wasn't. We ran into a few issues, and I was like, yeah, I don't think it's for me. Tried it again with Imperium, didn't work out. I did, however, like just taking. They have like a section in the GM chapter to change the zones to actual like distances, like miniature gaming. And I thought that was like that solves all of the issues I had with Imperium. I also enjoy, like, from Imperium, I like that everyone is very low level, which is something that I really enjoyed in Dark Heresy, playing the Acolytes and not playing the super powerful, Lord Inquisitor. It's always fun, for sure, to, have the Power Fist and the Power Sword, and you have your high-level Psyker, Lord Inquisitor or whatever. Like, it's a fantasy, sure. I have my Inquisitor retinue in my my completely legal Warhammer 40k army, but I don't know, as a role player, like, I prefer to play the Acolytes, the Adeptus, the like, I love Rogue Trader, right? 396 hours. But the fact that you are so rich that you deal in, like, buying a planet for fun, I don't know. My dreams of wealth have a limit, I guess, and buying a planet is outside of that scope. The human stories you get in 40k. Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's so even only War, I've played in one, like, short campaign that a friend of mine ran. I really enjoyed the sort of, like, buddy mechanic you have with, like, your you have your main character, but you also have, like, someone who follows you around, right? Your Sam Gamgee, and or more people, because you are an Imperial soldier, you are going to die, and, like, to some extent, I would run, or I would want to play in, like, a 40k version of MASH using those rules. Like, sure, it's always, you're on the front lines with the orcs, and you are going to get completely wrecked. The game I was in with Sheepy and Splatter on, I think it was Roll For It, where we ended up dying in the first session, and then we switched over to playing the orcs instead. For sure, it's fun. I wouldn't play in that for, like, a year straight. It was, comic. A lot of laughs were had, for sure. I played the first orc to have ever set foot on Terra because what was it, like a miscast on a psychic power made it so that I could wish whatever I wanted, and so I wished to see, like, that God Emperor that the humans kept screaming about, and ended up appearing on Terra, surviving for about 1 second, and dying. But it's theoretically, it means that Earth is doomed because an orc was there, so, spores and all that. No, Krellin, I agree. Like, there has to be a sort of like an improvement curve. You have to become, like, to get better. And I think that's where, for instance, in Imperium Maledictum, that's where all of your advances and everything will sort of start to pay, because as you work for your faction, which is kind of cool also, because in this case we played, like, one faction for everyone, but you can decide to play, like, one player per faction if they want. And they have to have a reason to be together, and they each have, like, their little faction leaders, like, pulling at the strings, trying to get them to do things on their behalfs and everything. But as you get influence with them, you will of course get, like, better equipment. And also there's this rule where we haven't seen it that much. I mean, I've called it often in the game, where I'm gonna ask a player, like, do you have an advance in this or that skill? because the way they work is, yes, you can roll for skill checks, but the moment you have advances, like the moment you start investing in those skills, easier skill checks are succeeded automatically. So you don't run into this issue. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Warhammer Fantasy 2nd Edition, and yet the issue exists in there as well, where it's like, well, my character has bought like all of the advances possible. I am the world's best archer, and yet my regular chance to hit is 70%. If I have to make a roll with like a plus 20, which is like plus 10, plus 20, plus 30, right? But if I have to make a roll at plus 20, I think at that point, should I really fail an easy check? Like, probably not. Like, I don't have to roll to tie my shoes anymore, he says at 38 years old. I think I've bought enough advances in tying my shoes that I shouldn't have to roll. And I kind of like that with Imperium Maledictum, where you're always going to run into some like challenges for your character, but you're not going to have to worry about previous challenges after a while. Was it? I don't know. Would want to look at the mashed book to see about mashing those up. Short campaigns is how streamed games work. Krellin, it's the longest campaigns I've ran in my life have all been streamed campaigns. Like, for a long time, the longest campaign I had run was like a year and a half for an offline game with my home group, because I have a big problem of never finishing my games and switching over to a different system. Something special interest or ADHD or whatever. I can't, like, once I get invested into something, I sort of begin to forget about everything else. Nothing's important anymore. Whereas because of streaming, it sort of pushed me to actually run those games. Yeah, Montreal by Night was a good example. I think we went for like 2 years or something. 18 months? I don't remember exactly, but I have the stats here. They're not going to be super accurate because they're from my YouTube. But if I just look, I think it was 2 years. Here. Well, I mean, theoretically, so we ran like 61 sessions for sure. So that would have been like every week, right? Would have been like a year and some change. We did take some breaks. Like, I don't count. So for instance, in Scion, I do not count like the months that we had to take off and everything because of, you know, COVID was a big issue at some point. But we still have like 54 sessions of Scion, and in reality there were a lot of them that were on a different channel that I did not have access to the VODs and everything, so there's like 12 additional things. So Scion runs at 66 episodes or something right now, maybe a bit more because I know that some of them fell through the cracks. The last one is date. Yeah, no. Page of so many. Can I just go to the last page? Yeah, 70. So we ran for 70 session, which is longer than Montreal by Night, which ran for 61. But Montreal by Night was from September 2022 to those videos aren't supposed to be in that list. So to season 6, episode 5, July of 2024. Yeah, basically to July. So it's almost 2 years. I just found out that a bunch of Gotham City Chronicle games were on that list, and they're not supposed to be on that list. The heck. But yeah, so earlier, before those, I didn't have very long games. Like one game that I ran for about a year was a Warhammer game. Fatal, hi Fatal. Are you having fun? What's a system you want to run a full campaign that you haven't done yet? Good question, because that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So a year does get out. Yeah, to me. So as much as I like hearing about people that are like, oh, I've played this game for like 20 years. We're in a D&D campaign that we started in like first edition, and we've never moved away from that, and we're still playing the same characters 20 years later. I'm like, cool. But the way I see it is my life is short, and there are so many games out there that I want to try, so many stories I want to tell and or live through, that I cannot commit 20 years to a game. Like if I do this and it's a weekly game, like when you think about it, 20-year long campaign, you're gonna go through like what, 3 in your whole lifespan, and that's it. Assuming that it's like the only things that you play, right? Yeah, 3 to 5 year campaigns, those are fun. I know that Kat was, I'm just gonna ask her for a second. Yeah, so Kat, whereas in a Werewolf the Apocalypse game that had started before she joined, but even though it started as a LARP, but after she's joined, she played for like 10 years until the game was the 10 years until the campaign was canceled. So like that is a lot, and like I've sat down during their sessions, like I wasn't playing in it, but I sat down to like watch them play. And like the pace of it is quite different than what we have, say, like on a stream game, right? Canceled with no finale. Yeah, Fatal. I'm not gonna start talking about like what happened because it's not my story to tell. But essentially, it's one of those, you know, friends having a falling out. And COVID. COVID didn't help because it was an in-person game that she played with friends that we made at a LARP ages ago, and they live like an hour and a half, 2 hours ride away from here. So they would meet every month, but the problem is then once COVID started, and then, you know, other issues and blah, 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 and then it just died. Whereas in my case, it's the opposite. COVID made it so that I got to run a bunch of cool shit. I got to, you know, play with Matt Mercer because of COVID, or Doug Cockle, and made basically all the friends that I have now, like a huge number of you in chat right now. Yeah, petering out without a finale. It's like I said earlier, my own, you know, ADHD thing. That didn't help. So Warhammer Fantasy, there's a campaign that I ran that we quote-unquote canceled, but it's only because the players' actions led it to such like a fitting end for a Warhammer game that I was like, there is no way in hell that we can continue this game. You guys just made it so that it felt perfect. Just the exact kind of feel that, like, I would read it in a novel, the novel would end there, and I'd be like, yeah, part of me wants to see more of those characters, but at the other end, no, it needed to end there. And some of my players might not have been super happy about that, but eventually sort of came around to see it the way I saw it. Essentially, the ending, without going into like too long of a story, but because of miscommunication and a misunderstanding, the players end up in jail. Like the whole time they were up against nobility, up against like, yeah, the upper caste of society, and eventually get sort of to carve their own path in the feudal system. And because of a fuck up, as usual, you know, the lords win. You cannot escape that fate. You cannot escape this grim reality that was also ours. That is all, yeah. Going back to point from earlier, because Fatal, you had your question on what do I want to play this year. I've teased that we were going to go to space and everything, and that's because for the longest time now, I have been working... Oh, hi, Werewolf. I've been working on a... what's it called? Crypto-fascist, techno-feudal TTRPG. Basically, the premise being, in huge quotes, what if Elon Musk actually terraformed Mars? What would happen? And it becomes a shit show very quickly. First of all, it fails. And all of those billionaires sort of carve out Mars into those little, like, techno kingdoms. And it's bad. It's all bad. And what comes out of it years later is sort of this kind of like American frontier type of society. See, yes, kind of like Mars Warlogs, but because it takes place a lot later, it's not so much post-apocalyptic anymore. Like, society has gotten back on their, found their footing again. But the issue is, Mars will die. Like, the whole point of the game is to sort of build a community, find yourself a plot of land, if you will, help others, and, you know, fend off those who are still either loyal to the now gone Martian overlords, or find a way to reach out to Earth and to get them to come help eventually. It depends on what you want to play, basically, but it's cowboys in space, which is something that's been overly done to some extent. The main source of inspiration for it, like the one thing that sparked it, is the bar scene at the very start of StarCraft II: Wings of Liberty. That video, not necessarily that aesthetic, but to some extent. I don't have an art direction yet for it. I commissioned a few sketches for like the private playtest we're gonna run for the system and everything. It's a very crunchy system that I made, inspired by, if you're familiar with the game Wasteland. So it takes from a bit of like Savage World, but also takes a bit from GURPS. Anyway, I like mishmashed a bunch of stuff together. The things that I liked, filming here and there, there's an entire like social, quote-unquote social combat. Oh, Pope Wasteland 3 is absolutely amazing. Yeah, a lot of things that I want to test out, that I want to see if it works. I want to see if people enjoy it. Like, I've had a blast just working on that world. I sat down with some friends way back when that helped me go through basically like sort of a rough draft of what could have happened. And of course, this is a very, very like social commentary type of game. There's a lot of parallels without, like, I'm not going to use their names or anything of like Musk and whatever bullshit billionaire, but like there's a lot of connections that you can draw. And yes, I'm going to play this. So basically what I'm going to do is there's going to be a private playtest like I did for One Frightful Night, which I'll put a pin in there. We're going to test it out at least offline first, because I want to make sure that like the basics of the game work. So the issue that I have by the way, for those who don't know, I'm a narrative designer first and a game designer second. And as a as a narrative designer first, I have a lot of ideas, but sometimes the math doesn't math well. And with a crunchy game like this one, I want to make sure to fine-tune things before we get to play. Like, to have to, you know, wave away a skill check because of like something, like wave away a rule because, you know, we're in the heat of the moment. Yeah, no, that's fine. It's more like, oh, realizing that the type of character that someone made, like the idea they had in mind for their archetype and there's like 36 skills in the game. Maybe like the synergy between the skills and the perks that they took ends up not working. And we realize that, you know, 6, 7, 8 weeks in. I don't want to have that happen like on camera necessarily, mainly for the player, because you don't know what it's going to happen. So how they're going to react, or, you know, I would rather when we stream a game that everyone at the table has fun. That's the whole point. Like, I'm not using this platform to playtest game or to market anything. I don't want a 3.0 Ranger problem. Ooh, do you want to talk about the fucking Ranger? And so yeah, we're gonna run like I have a short shot that I've already sort of built. It depends, Fatal. So normally your very first playtest is, so we've done it. I mean, I've that giant fucking box over there, right, of game I wrote. Normally when you run like your first batch of playtests, there's some things you want to figure out first. So say we'll go with the TTRPG, maybe your very first playtest is, hey, is character creation understandable? Like, if I give those instructions to someone who's never played the game before, do they understand? Can they make a character? Is this enjoyable? Then sometimes you want to just test for like a special mechanic. So it's like, okay, I need to figure out if the cover rules in combat is something that works. So here's like a series of encounters, and we're just going to go through them. And I want the players to, like, without telling them that this is what I'm testing, I want to see, will they, knowing how cover works, will they interact with that mechanic? Because if they don't, then the issue is, and that's like why you sit down at the end and you go with your players through it, and it's, well, did you know that this exists? Like, do you remember me telling you about it? And it's like, oh, maybe not. Then maybe it's worthwhile to have like cheat sheets, or to have like info straight on the character sheet of like, hey, by the way, cover gives plus whatever. Like, so many companies, looking at you, Botsy, are busy making DM screens, whereas you should really invest in like a player screen, like a player aid thing, because there's so many more tricks that the players can use, can have at their disposal, that like the GM shouldn't have to remember these things for them, because then you run into the issue of, well, do you want the GM to help you? To be like, hey, by the way, you forgot like that bonus. Hey, by the way, you forgot to use that thing. Because then it becomes like either GM interference, or it becomes, you know, well, the GM's not fair anymore because the GM's helping. So where's that fairness, depending on who you play with and what you want. So the breaking of the game is like one of my last playtests, which is often like everything works out if you make like normal characters. Like, as I've been designing, I have like archetypes. I gave them names. I don't remember what they are, but going through the shit, that's the wrong Word doc. So going through my my design document, like I have here, for instance, the amount of skill points and perks a character can get over the course of their entire existence, right? So a campaign that goes from level 1 to level 30 in this system, and it's basically the difference between someone who min-maxes and someone who goes like with an average character. So if you want to min-max for anything that's like combat and you don't care about skills, the difference between you and like an average character or an average with like someone who wants to max out, like be like a skill monkey, is it acceptable? Like, is that difference okay, or is it bad? So for instance, if you make a character in this game that has like a low amount of skill points, you need skills to fight, right? So you want to make a fight like a quote-unquote fighter. You want to be like a combat machine. You're gonna have to have skills. Maybe not as much or as many like diverse skills as someone else, but you're still gonna want to have them. So the issue becomes like, hey, if you were like, you want to have like the best gunslinger and you want to max out the stats that you need to be good at gunslinging and the skills that you need to be good at like fighting with like handguns and say like, I don't know, rifles. Can you do it with the dumbest possible character? And is it going to be fun? On paper, seems like it. And at some point, once I've tested out like the sort of mid-range stuff, then yeah, I'll ask my players like, hey, by the way, so let's make like a short shot, make the most broken ass characters you can, and we're just gonna go through like a gauntlet of challenges, and I want to see if you breeze through them or if one of them breaks you. At the same time, the game I'm making is more along a so if we talk about like the Trinity, I know Trooper likes to talk about the old Forge Trinity of games, which is a theory that I also ascribe to. In those three aspects, I always lean more towards the simulationist type of GM, and I like simulationist games, which means they don't have to be balanced. If you decide, you know, you see someone who's, let's take like Cyberpunk, you watch Adam Smasher, you see him on the street, you decide to go punch him in the face, you are going to die. It's not because you're supposed to run away from Smasher. Smasher is just there. If you want to go meet him and like have him sign an autograph, you're gonna die. But I am not going to, you know, unless you give Smasher a reason to go after you, he's not going to. Like, he's got his own stuff to do. We've seen it a lot with the Cyberpunk game that I ran, or even the Vamp game, the Montreal by Night, where some of the vampires were a lot stronger than others. And you could have decided, like, at the start of the game, the coterie could have decided to try to, like, murder the prince. Like, just coup d'etat the whole thing. It might have worked if they took into account, like, if they did their homework and they took into account, you know, his security forces or where he was, or, you know, what's his, like, schedule and movements like and all that. So, yes, there's a point of, like, breaking the game. In Martian Cowboys, it's pretty much, is there like one archetype that's stronger than everything else and there's no point in playing anything but that? Honestly, a lot of it has to do with how to read those characters. Yeah, they bloat so it's hard to see your main utilities. Yeah, Werewolf for D&D. I mean, Pathfinder 2.0, the character sheet hurts my eyes. And while I know that there's a lot of things that Pathfinder 2.0 does that I don't like in D&D 5 that I would prefer in Pathfinder, there's also stuff in Pathfinder that when I play D&D, I want like a closer to a more streamlined thing. My issue with D&D is this, so far, I think, with hindsight, my favorite edition would have been like 4th. But not 4th edition when it came out, like 4th edition, the very, very end of it. And even then, I find that the high fantasy thing is, like, that's what I enjoyed a lot about the early 5th edition, is like all the fantasy went down a notch. I mean, my favorite edition is 2nd, but like 2nd with not 100% of all the rules that Gygax created, because he just made up a bunch of shit just so he could, like, have ownership of everything D&D and not have people like release like free zines for that. Hi Schmelzer, Things like spell cards, tokens, whiteboards. Yeah. It's, yeah, Krellin. There's a difference between, balancing, like, the work that the game designers did on chapters or on, like, Retaliation or even the Rayman board game, is different than what you would have in a TTRPG, because in a board game, much like a video game, there's, like, in a board game, it's a more analog type of computing power, but it's the same thing, right? It's, unless it's completely PvP in a co-op game, the game needs to be able to run, and it's always going to run the same way, and thus, because of that, it's easy to find exploits in it. And it's, like, we found out a lot of people who have a lot of good things to say about chapters, for instance, will talk about more like how they played through, like, a scenario. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we did this, and this, and, like, we saw that, like, this was, like, there was a problem here, you know, hundreds of erratas in that game, and they were like, yeah, we waved that away because we didn't care. Whereas other people are like, well, we do things by the book, and when we reached that place, we didn't know what to do anymore, because the machine, the rule book, or whatever engine you want to have, like, doesn't specifically take this thing into account, and so we feel like if we do what we think is right, we're cheating. There are clearly certain builds in chapters that are going to make the game a lot easier, and some people know of it and have, you know, told us about it. And some were like, I know that, like, I could win easily by taking, like, this discipline, or, like, this team of characters and these, like, loadouts with items and such. And they're like, but we didn't, because we figured the fun would be to actually be underpowered and find a solution for it. But it still is part of the things that need playtesting. The boy mousetrap. Yeah, Krellin, that's bringing back memories. I think they still make mousetraps. I think, maybe. Anyway. But Martian Cowboy is going to be one that will be shown. I'm hoping to run the private playtest in, like, I don't know, February, maybe? Like, January, February. And then later on, go with the game. Like, probably take the same premise, the same adventure that I built for the playtest, expand upon it a bit, and then just have the players, like, go wild with, like, making their own characters instead of having pre-mades. Because in this case, I have pre-made characters because I want to make sure during that playtest that, well, the basics of the game work. Like, it's one thing to play it by myself. The issue is when you're designing a game and you're playing it by yourself to test it out, you already know everything. You're going to miss a lot of things because you go in with, like, knowledge you already have. I encounter the same issue when I write project that I can't talk about right now, but writing for that made me realize that sometimes I will have, like, a character say XYZ and nobody, like, it's evident for me. Nobody else picks up on, like, those clues. But that's because, well, it's clear for me because I know what the answer is. Like, we're talking about, like, say, a murder mystery. It's like, I know who did it. But perhaps the clues that I'm seeding aren't clear enough for someone who doesn't have the knowledge of the person who, like, works behind the screen. Which is kind of the same thing when you want to playtest the game. Speaking of playtesting, I'm going to take the pin out of the One Frightful Night. The second playtest is going to happen. We're late now. I wanted to have it done in October. Basically, it would have maybe been the second to last or last playtest. And then I wanted to release the game this year, probably around October. So One Frightful Night, for those of you who don't know, is an anthology-like game of horror that is basically built on how I run my horror games at home. Whereas it, like, whether it's like Cthulhu or it's using like the World of Darkness system, we played Dread for a while too with my home group and other horror games, 10 Candles and all that. But there's like a style that I have in running my games that is different from all of those. And long story short, someone convinced me to put all of that down on paper and to you know, do something about it. And that's how One Frightful Night was born. Now, after the first playtest, the neighborhood thing, we talked about like what went well, what didn't, and there are a couple things, especially regarding character creation, that I wanted to change. I hit a wall of I was gonna say lack of inspiration. It's not a lack of inspiration, it's more of a I don't have any more ideas. I'm looking for, basically in One Frightful Night, when you create your character, you have these like questions. I call it the pentagram of the past. So it's 5 questions, some of which are tied to the archetype of character that you're playing. Others, see, for the first playtest, those other questions, some were left like up to the player completely, which is fine. But players were like, sometimes I don't know what I want to have on there because I don't know my character enough yet. I would like to have examples. And I needed something like 55 examples. And I think I stopped at like 30 something. And I was like, okay, I'll wait, like, I'll put it down, I'll wait a few weeks, I'll come back and, you know, I'll have inspiration then. And it didn't happen. And then, well, October, November, December were very hard for me on a personal level, so I sort of didn't, you know, do anything with the game for a while. But it's I mean, the video and the overlays for the stream are already done, and so we just need to like sit down, have the group. Some people in the group that we had like moved, they might not stream anymore, so I'm gonna have to like get people together, do that. I'm also going to look for like new players for a lot of my games, mostly because I enjoy playing with like my friends, but sometimes I want to try things with new people. The main issue that I've had in the past with like blind casting is sometimes it works well, sometimes you meet wonderful people, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the group just doesn't vibe enough. And for some of the games that I want to run this year, I am looking at like very specific people. Like, for instance, for One Frightful Night, I was looking for people who are into horror, but who are also players who are able to quote unquote be self-sufficient, in the sense that if the story seems to come to a lull, like, they're gonna take the reins and they're gonna go with it, and they're not afraid to have their characters go through, like, put their characters through the ringer. Essentially, I wanted to have like fanfic writers, right? And just so it would help, because I'm taking like this role of like, I need to make sure that all the the machine works in the back. And so that means that sometimes I might not have put like as much effort on the monster or the events, or like in the neighborhood. Like, there were a lot of houses in that neighborhood where I was like, I don't know who lives there. I have a like short list of people, but I haven't spent, you know, weeks and weeks building this neighborhood like I did with Night City or with Montreal from Montreal by Night. Because that wasn't the point of the game, right? Whereas normally if I would stream a game like this, my Legend Keeper would be full of info for it already. Again, because it's the type of gaming that I do, I create an entire world. I know my NPCs, I know what they want, I know how they are. And then I can just let the players like play through it. And it helps with improv a lot in my case. My notes are very chaotic, which is kind of a weakness on my part. But yeah, so Martian Cowboys, One Frightful Night. The third one I am hoping is a Horizon Zero Dawn TTRPG that I've been working on. I don't have the rights, so don't like go all crazy. I'm not hired by like Guerrilla or anything. I fell in love with the world, fell in love with the games, and with like all the themes and everything in it. And something happened, and one night I sat down, and overnight so it's gonna use a system that y'all are probably familiar with if you've been on this channel before. But the point is I want to tell a Horizon story, and we're gonna do that with players that I found who are massive fans of the franchise, who also like crave this without wanting to basically just be a recreation, like a tabletop recreation of the games. Like there's no Aloy in the game that I'm gonna run, or I mean it probably exists somewhere, but it's like a kind of like what I did with my Star Wars game, very first stream on the channel, where it's like an alternate universe where, you know, the movies never existed. In Horizon, it's going to be, well, the games happened, but like we're not going to set. The game's not going to take place in Colorado or California or all that. We're going to start there, but we're going to expand in a direction that hasn't been covered yet, and tell stories that are probably very interesting. Like, I find that Horizon is, while it's probably the bleakest fucking post-apocalyptic game, like, world I've ever seen, because the, you know, survival rate was 0. This sort of, I don't know, rebirth, and the whole, I don't know, there are these themes of yes, there's like danger and everything, but it's like wonder, it's discovery, it's community. Like, I think community is also going to be a big theme this year. As much as I like dark games and everything, whereas Martian Cowboys sort of makes fun of a lot of certain cast of people in this world that have been historically assholes. I feel like I need some hope in my life, and I think that's going to fill that niche. And then the last one, of course, is the game that I've been showcasing at PAX, that, you know, can finally talk about, Ancient Ones, which is based on the world and artwork of one Alan Panical. Here's the link to his website if you want to see how freaking gorgeous. Actually, I now own a piece of that artwork, so I can show it. But here's like the art style that he has, and yep, I should be this way. So he built a world. Over years of just like painting stuff, and he wanted to turn it into a game, and he approached me, and it's been a wonderful collaboration. And so we are going to play some Ancient Ones. It uses the D&D OGL thing because it's, you know, that's how you can reach a lot of people, even though my personal I've had my fill personally of D&D, so this is going to probably be the last D&D-ish game that I run on the channel for years to come, even with my home group. The moment we finish our current campaign, I'm not touching D&D again for a while, for multiple reasons, but also, you know, it's been like 11 years. I think we can move on to something else. And yeah, so this is... I hate the elevator pitch, but I also love it because it's like 3 words and you already have an idea of the type of game, the stories and everything that you're gonna go through, and it's Destiny meets Farscape. Yeah, Roller, have a breath of fresh air. Exactly. There's this... So, those of you who've watched... I'm getting warm. Those of you who've watched the Gotham City Chronicles game, which, by the way, I'm gonna pick back up after Warhammer. It's made using a game system. It's a French game called Chroniques Oubliées, The Forgotten Chronicles. And while it's built off of 3rd edition D&D, like D20 Modern type of thing, they changed it a lot. I've scoured their SRD. It's very cool. I want to get my hands on... Like, it's the first time in my life that I'm going to own a French role-playing game. Like, all of these books in the back, I've never had a single French TTRPG book. Ever. I've had, like, some of the Forgotten Realms novels in French. I think I still have one upstairs. But that's because, you know, public library, they only had that. The moment I could get my hands on English versions, I switched over to English. That's because I have issues with fantasy writing in the French language. But Forgotten Chronicles scratches that D&D-ish itch without it being D&D. There's a big difference between European TTRPGs that want to be like D&D and American D&D. I know it's kind of weird, but the way they approach worlds and they approach magic or combat and all that, it's quite different. It's weird, but there's this blog from an old Games Workshop designer who's talking about when TSR pulled out of the UK and like the rise of Warhammer Fantasy and some of the arguments that led to that, and some of that had to do with... Sorry, I need to move the camera. Some of that had to do with how the world is presented. They... Like, travel distances in Forgotten Realms make absolutely no sense. The planet is way too big. It's strange. You see it if you play, I think it's like Horde of the Dragon Queen or something like that, where you go from Baldur's Gate to Waterdeep, I think, and it's like a 9-month journey. Like, a 9-month journey is crossing the ocean in the 15th century. There should not be any reliable trade between those two cities ever, because it just doesn't make sense. And UK players at the time had trouble seeing that, because to them, medieval Europe, that's different. You don't camp at night in between two towns. Like, you have either inns or like either coaching inns or some type of settlement every day in your travels, because otherwise it's way too dangerous. Like, that whole Oregon Trail type of adventure that is very prevalent in D&D. They couldn't wrap their heads around it until, like, the guy writing that blog post, that designer, is like, until I went on a trip to the United States, and he flew from like the East Coast to the West Coast and saw how wide it was and the various biomes that exist in, you know, from like say New York to California. And he's like, then I sort of understood like why Gygax saw it that way. Because to an American, this is normal. Like, this is their reality. But it's not something that you can, like, you know, because history is not the same, of course. You know, when you talk about, you know, history classes here versus history classes in Europe, they, you know, when you have castles in your backyard, it's easier to learn about how things were done back then, just because of how easily accessible, you know, you have like your school, what are they called again? Like field days. You learn about a whole lot of things that we didn't. And the opposite is true. They cannot wrap their heads around, say, me saying that a 12-hour car drive is not that long. It's just, to them, 12-hour car ride means like you're gonna cross like 3 or 4 countries. You don't do that. You don't drive for 12 hours. You drive for like 1 or 2, and that's it. Like anything longer than that is just weird, and you should like, well, in their case, take public transport because they have trains all over the place. But they're still going to sort of like shirk away from this. Whereas in my case, it's like, well, if I'm in Berlin one day and I'm like, hey, I would really want to just like go to Rome for like a weekend, I won't mind doing it. But I know friends, especially like coworkers at work, who are like, nah, we don't do that. It's like if you're gonna go that distance, like you're gonna go there for longer. And it's like, yeah, but I don't mind leaving at like 9 a.m., get there at 9 p.m. and then spend like 2 days and then come back. It's just not a problem. This is something that's different for them. Hence why the world of Warhammer Fantasy, for instance, looks very different from the world of Greyhawk or like the Forgotten Realms. It's not the same thing. But even like Krellin, even the train thing is, even a 12-hour train ride is too long. Like, why would you do this? What I mean is like mostly for like a quick trip, right? Like, you know, you're gonna drive 24 hours total to stay 24 hours somewhere. Why would you do that? But it's fine. Like from here to Quebec City is like 2-ish hours or 2 hours or less, depending on how fast you drive. And yet, to a lot of my coworkers, driving to Quebec for a day and coming back is a limit. They do not understand when someone like Kat would say, I'm gonna go to Toronto, which is 6 hours away, for like just a single day. Like, we're gonna leave at 6 in the morning, get there at noon, spend the day there, and then come back at night. It's weird. It's weird, but it's different like that. Anyway, to go back to what I was saying, Forgotten Chronicles is something that I would like to play, but it's probably going to have to wait until 2026 because the last thing that I want to get around to do this year on the channel is probably going to be another Witcher game. I'm still swinging between Warhammer Fantasy and Witcher, but I haven't done Witcher in a while, and for a long time I don't know, I guess Witcher was my brand, quote unquote. And while there's a lot of reasons why I'm not, why nothing new for the Witcher TTRPG has come out in a while, I can't talk about that, but that doesn't mean we can't run games. And it's been a while. But I think like for like 2020, 2021, I ran just so many and played in so many Witcher games that I got my fill. But I'm getting that itch of wanting to play in like a semi-grim dark medieval reality. Like, again, it comes down to I want to play a game where we're going to talk about community and hope in the face of adversity. And let's face it, there's a lot of things that are contemporary in the Witcher universe to like our world. And I like when like I can't do anything, or I can barely do anything to affect change on a rapid and noticeable scale in the real world, but at least I can have like that fantasy of doing it in a different world on a scale that is, you know, quicker. That was the Prince of Witcher streaming. Thank you, bro. I wouldn't call myself that. I'm fairly certain there were other channels that were a lot more, I don't say popular necessarily, but like consistent, or that ran like longer games or what have you. Even though at this rate, 1, 2, 3. I think it was like 3 campaigns and then a bunch of charity games, and then Praxis game that I was in. But I'm not gonna hide the fact that I miss playing with Dog, though I don't think he would be available for like a long form game, if only because of time zones. But Lindy also had a nice Witcher story on her channel. Wait, Lindy ran a Witcher game? It's funny because I was talking to Lindy earlier today, but I'm completely blanking out. I sent her a message. Anyway, a lot of Lindy was a player. I forget who ran it years ago. Because I know she was in Praxis game. But I ran a bunch. Anyway, we're gonna see the one with like the big production game this year is for sure going to be Horizon. I'm putting a lot of things on the Horizon game. I'm hoping it goes somewhere. Like, I'm hoping people like it enough that we play more than, 6 months. I'm also trying very, very hard this year to be consistent. It's my... Oh, Greg transferred his Witcher game. Yeah! Yes, okay, that one. Yes. Grimjack Bill of the Forest. Yes, I remember that game. That was after... I think it's the game that ran after Dawn was done with May Black Roses Bloom, or it was concurrent to it, because it's where I met Lindy, and then I remember watching them play Witcher, and that's also when I met Chuber for the first time. That's true. It was over in that channel. Yeah, because wasn't Hawkeye playing like a merchant for a while in that game? So one of the things about the game on that channel, if you remember, Praxis' character was named Ainfra. Ainfra of something. Don't remember the place that she... shoot. I forgot it. I had it for a second. It's that maritime place. Sidaris, I think. You would think that I would know this world by heart. I think it's Sidaris. Yeah, because she was from she from the city of Sedaris directly? Not quite sure. Anyway, if you have the book Tome of Chaos for The Witcher, which behind me would be my Witcher stuff. Over there. Yeah. So if you have the Tome of Chaos for The Witcher, and you look at the spells, Ainfra was basically canonized as a character. There's a spell named after Ainfra, and it's an ice spell, like what Praxis' character was casting all the time. During the writing of Tome of Chaos, we were looking for names for spells, and that one, like the spell name existed, but it was missing the name of a sorceress or a mage that would have made it popular. And I was like, well, why not Ainfra? I pitched it. It was accepted. So now it's a thing. Now I'm opening the Tome of Chaos. Magical Mundane, compilation of Chaos Mage spells. Put it here. Let me do like a quick window capture here. Yeah, you can probably see it on screen at the moment, the PDF. Put it here, and it's I think it's like a master spell. Yep, Ainfra's Extraction. It's right here. And it's Magthurga. She was from Magthurga. There you go. And I believe it's a spell that she did use in the game. In Greg's game. But yeah, so I want to go back to Witcher or to Warhammer Fantasy. I want like some low magic medieval action. And it's going to be one of those. Both of them, I know the setting and the rules by heart, so it's not going to be like complicated for me to run it. Whereas, you know, Martian Cowboys, for instance, even though I wrote the rules, I don't necessarily always remember all of them. Sometimes I just go like, hey, that's a weird thing. I don't remember writing that, but okay. So those are the things. Those are the games that I'm going to run this year. Last year we did, Scion, that's still undergoing. Gotham City Chronicles at the end of the year. Vampire took most of 2024. Speaking of Vampire, like all of my other games are going to have Legend Keepers. The Legend Keepers are going to be public. I don't think I'm gonna jump off that platform anytime soon. But see, like for instance, for which game was it? If you watched the Mouse Guard charity game that I ran over on High Shelf Collective for Christmas for their 12 days of givings. This was the first time I used alchemy as a platform, and I built all of these little scenes with the characters in there. It looked like a cute little visual novel type of thing. I might be able to share one. I don't know if it's going to work. But like, them at the merchant? There was no, okay, so like the lake. I'm gonna share my screen. Fudge. Nope. Yeah, because I changed one of them and I added a something in the foreground, which means that it hides everything. But basically, it was a cute little like montage of things, right? I like the production value of Alchemy, and I wanted to use it for some of the games this year. But then during the charity game, something happened that made me rethink about it. And it's the fact that some of the effects over on Alchemy would make, I think it was like 2 of my players' computers lag something fierce. And I can't have that. And it's not something that the player could turn off on their end. It was something that I had control over. It's like the snow thing, or like thunder, rain, like all of the ambiance thing, all of the stuff that adds like value to your game, to like just the ambiance. It doesn't run on all sorts of machines. So what's the point of using a VTT, especially one like Alchemy where I would have to build everything from scratch, because none of the games I want to run this year are available on Alchemy. Why go through all of this if in the end I can't really use it to its full potential? So I'll see what I'm gonna do, because it could have been interested, even for like Witcher or something, to have like a I don't know, some like atmosphere, some ambiance. I had toyed about doing it for Montreal by Night, because Vampire the Masquerade, like they talked about having it integrated to Alchemy and all that, but it came in too late for me to use it. But I feel like for Vampire it would have also been fun. Then again, I don't know if all the players would have been able to run it without it glitching. And of course, the last thing, it's true, I was talking about 2024 before a second there. The last thing that is going to happen this year is we are going to have another big giant murder mystery with like guests from a bunch of different channels. Is it going to be tied to a game? I don't know. I have gotten ideas, fun little ideas for something that would happen later this year. And I'm thinking of maybe turning these things into like an annual thing, where we just have one every year, maybe do something for charity at the same time. Though the incentive part is kind of a problem, because you know you want to have incentives for people to donate that are also going to maybe impact the game. But in a game like the Murder Mystery, like the one I ran last year, like I would not have been able to also handle that on the side. Like just I would have needed someone to run production for me, because handling all of those like side conversations and people using their abilities and everything, you should see, like it's the first time I had to have like multiple post-its on my desk with like things to do, and then I would like move them around because okay, this person wants to do this with that person, and those two have to talk, but then this person no longer has like enough uses of that ability, so they can't blah 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 blah. And then my Discord just kept pinging over and over and over. So it was fun, tons of fun. I'm going to have another one for sure. It's also going to have way too many players, probably 7 again. This time, though, we're not going to be in 1950s America. We're going to either move to the 1800s or to the 1500s. I have like 2 ideas that I'm developing like in parallel. And then I'll see like one of them. I'll probably click with one of them more than the other. And so I'll leave the other for like a future year and go with the other one. Because I don't know, I really enjoyed it, and I think the people that watched it also really enjoyed it, and it's something that I would like to do again. I'm saying all of this on January 14th, as I am, you know, doing my New Year's resolutions and shit. We'll see in 3 months if that's the case again. But yeah, that's what you can expect for this year. I had a blast in 2024. I've also realized that, unlike the COVID years, I can't stream more than twice a week at most. My schedule is just way too busy, and there are projects that I'm being brought on for stuff that are basically taking all of my time. Like, one of the reasons that we moved Gotham and Warhammer to Tuesday was also players and their schedules, but also in my case, needing to be in the studio on Mondays means that on Monday night I would get here at like 7:38. With the stream starting at 8:30, that means I would need to, like, if I had any prep to do or anything like that, I would have to do it on Sundays. But my Sundays are normally the days that I use to recuperate from my Saturday, both streaming Scion and having my home group over for our like Saturday gaming, which we've been doing for 27 years now. So I don't think that's gonna stop. Yeah. So having to move it to Tuesday, but also means that like some other days of the week I have stuff already in place. So it's like I have a lot of games that I want to run. 4 this year so far. Is that it? Martian, Frightful, Horizon, Witcher. Yeah, 4 major ones. Oh, and of course Ancient Ones. But Ancient Ones is also going to run on a lot of different channels. I spoke with different streamers over at PAX, and a lot of people were interested in running one. So I need to reach out to them and sort of get this thing established. It's just Alan has to deal with things on his end for like marketing side of things and all that, so I'm sort of waiting on like a timeline, but expect a lot of this neon how does he call it again? Shattered realism? No. He has a name for his art style, and I completely blanked out on it, and I used to always remember it. It is fractured impressionistic realism. Basically, if synthwave was an image. It's pretty much how I see it. So, sci-fi thing with a lot of synthwave, that's right along my chords. So, there's going to be that. I might show up as a player in other games. We'll see. I might run the games on other channels, but I would also really, really love for other people to take the book and run the games themselves and see what they think of it and the type of stories they want to tell with it. That's about it. It's gonna be a very busy year. We're gonna have a lot of things. And of course, finishing up Scion. I'm sitting here on the finale. Been sitting here on it for months now. We're in the last stretch, basically. But just like the reason I'm here tonight to talk to everyone, and the sort of guiding, like primary guideline for my channel is always, and it's my own philosophy as well, is that life comes first. Unless we're all signing contracts and we're like doing it in like a professional environment, but in that case it would mean like I'm paying everyone and all that, and not underpaying them either. Then I would expect everyone to always be there, and like if you can't be there, it's a problem, and blah blah blah. And like if it's a professional thing, it's a professional thing. This case it's not. And even in a professional environment, like if someone's sick, I will never hold it against them. In this case, because this is not a professional thing where people can live off of playing in my games, I'm not going to ask people to step out or step down of their own lives to come like roll dice on camera for fun. It's cool that it entertains people. That's awesome. I like to be entertained when I watch games, when I play games. But unless it's a business, it's fine if we have to wait. It's like I've been getting angsty. Angsty? I guess that's the word I'm looking for. No, not angst. Basically, I can't wait for my players to see what's at the end of the tunnel in Scion. Yeah, antsy, thank you. I don't know why I put a G in there for some reason. But yes, very antsy about them getting to the end and finally sort of, you know, I personally can't wait for what their reaction is going to be, what their choices are going to be at the very, very end of it. But if we have to wait, we have to wait. It's not a problem. And I know that, like, as a streamer, I mean, I've noticed it anyway over the years, like, viewership plummeted between, you know, those times during the first COVID years where I would stream 5 days a week versus going down to, like, 2 days a week. I don't hold it against anyone. People want to, you know, they want to watch something and they don't want to have to wait, or you know, there's only so many hours we have in life. Do whatever you want, watch whatever you want, and if it happens to be my games, cool. So, like, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I guess it's not going to change in 2025 either. You know, if players are sick, or if I am, or there's something that happens, and I know that in the coming years, not 2025, but probably 2026 or 2027 for me, I might need to disappear for a while. Hopefully I'll be able to tell people about it soon. But if that is the case, like, yeah, we're gonna put shit on hiatus and we're gonna come back later. But I'm really hoping to be able to run those 5 games this year. Because it's one thing to work on things that you think are fun, but I, as a person, I like to share, and I can't just be on my little computer in my little Word doc and writing my things about Martian crypto-fascist overlords being overthrown by fucking Jim Raynor type of thing. So yeah, on that note, I will be going, because, you know, it's 10 p.m. and as much as I'd like to talk to all of you, I am starting to get a little tired, and I haven't taken a break, so we'll just leave it at that for tonight. Thanks everyone for coming. I might do some more, like, just chatting streams in the future just to see. There's yeah, crit. Self-care is good. Oh, yeah, Starforge. Trooper introduced me to Starforge, and this is something I would really love to do. Maybe not a Crash Jones type of thing, but I really like it, and I would really want to do, like, a solo TTRPG on stream. I'll see what that, how that goes, but this is, like, my nice to have for this year. I already have way too much to do. But yeah, so thanks everyone for coming. As I said earlier, finale for Warhammer Short Shot, Warhammer 40k Public Honorum, is going to take place next week. We are going to go to the Leaky Place. Players are going to discover why I keep calling it the Leaky Place and why the people in the Hive called it the Leaky Place. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun for me, probably for all of you watching. Maybe not for the players. So on that, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for tuning in and for talking in chat and all of that. And I will see you next week.